The night was still and ominous as a heavy fog settled over the small town of Blackwood. The townsfolk had always spoken in hushed tones about the abandoned house that loomed on the outskirts, like a sinister sentinel guarding its secrets. No one dared to venture near it after sunset, for they believed that the place was cursed. A group of adventurous teenagers, fueled by curiosity and bravado, decided to challenge the legend. Among them was Sarah, a fearless and headstrong girl who had always been drawn to the unknown. She led the group with her unwavering determination. As they approached the forsaken house, its decaying facade sent shivers down their spines. Broken windows gaped like hollow eyes, and the once grand structure seemed to lean menacingly over them. The moonlight filtered through the dense fog, casting eerie shadows on the overgrown front yard. A sense of foreboding hung heavy in the air, but they pressed on, their footsteps echoing ominously in the silence. As they entered the darkened hallway, a sinister chill seemed to wrap itself around them. The group explored room after room, each more unsettling than the last. In one, they discovered old photographs of a family that had once lived there, their eyes seeming to follow them as they moved. In another, they stumbled upon a dusty, cracked mirror that reflected distorted images of themselves. The atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive, and uneasy glances were exchanged among the friends. Sarah led them to the basement, where the legends spoke of malevolent spirits and tortured souls. The stairs creaked with each step, and the air grew colder, as if the very essence of despair resided in the depths below. It was there that they found an old, tattered diary. As Sarah began to read its pages aloud, the words told a haunting tale of a family consumed by madness and despair. The diary's final entry spoke of a dark ritual to summon an otherworldly entity that would grant unimaginable power. It was signed by a name they recognized, a distant ancestor of Sarah's family. Just as Sarah finished reading, a chilling wind howled through the basement, extinguishing their flashlights. Panic set in as they fumbled to relight them, but it was too late. One by one, they were pulled into the shadows, their screams echoing through the house. Only Sarah remained, clutching the diary in trembling hands. As she turned to leave, she was confronted by a ghastly apparition, a grotesque amalgamation of the house's tormented history. It whispered dark secrets into her ears, promising her power beyond imagination if she would join its legion of lost souls. With a heavy heart, Sarah accepted, and the house absorbed her into its malevolent embrace. The eerie fog lifted, leaving the abandoned house standing silent once more. The townsfolk, unaware of the horrors that had unfolded, continued to shun the place. They could never have known the true darkness that dwelled within the forsaken house on the outskirts of Blackwood. And so, the legend of the abandoned house persisted, and the curious and the brave who ventured there were never seen again. The house stood as a grim testament to the unending thirst for power and the horrors that lurked in the shadows, waiting for their next victim. The fate of Sarah and her friends remained a mystery, and the town of Blackwood would forever be haunted by the unanswered questions that surrounded the cursed house on the hill. Mark and Alex sought a weekend getaway from their stressful jobs at a cabin in the woods. This cabin held a dark secret. It cursed anyone who stayed there, turning them into greedy, selfish beings. One dawn, Mark stood by the cabin, his face twisted in a sinister grin. The curse had granted him the success he craved, but it came at a terrible price, a stain on his conscience. As Mark enjoyed his newfound success at the office in the days that followed, the memory of the cursed cabin haunted him. He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, as if the cabin's evil still clung to him. Haunted by fear and guilt, Mark realized he had to leave everything behind. He fled the town, leaving his high-paying job and life behind. The cursed cabin remained, a reminder of the darkness he'd encountered. Weeks turned into months, and Mark's guilt grew. He became paranoid, fearing his crime would be exposed. Sleepless nights and nightmares tormented him relentlessly. Mark's life descended into a lonely, haunted existence, marked by guilt and the cursed cabin's specter. The secrets of that night remained buried in the forest, where the cabin's malevolence thrived, and Mark's soul remained forever tainted by his actions. He couldn't forget that dreadful night at the cabin, remembering everything vividly. That night, when he and Alex reached the cabin's curse began to take hold. It whispered insidiously, its influence slowly transforming Mark into a greedy, selfish monster. His desire for power and wealth became an all-consuming obsession, and he saw Alex as the one obstacle standing in his way. In the dead of night, Mark crept into the bedroom they shared, clutching a heavy object in his hand. His mind was consumed by thoughts of his high-paying position, and the allure of success drove him to commit a heinous act. With a single brutal strike, he silenced Alex forever. The cabin, shrouded in darkness and cursed for eternity, bore witness to this wicked deed. Mark's heart raced as he realized what he had done, but there was no turning back. He dragged Alex's lifeless body into the woods behind the cabin, his eyes filled with a cold, remorseless determination. He had murdered his colleague, his friend, to satisfy his insatiable greed. In the heart of an affluent neighborhood, there lived a woman named Eleanor. She was known throughout the town for her opulent lifestyle, her luxurious mansion, and her lavish parties. People admired her from afar, envious of her seemingly endless wealth. However, no one knew the chilling truth behind her riches. Eleanor had been born into a life of modest means, her family struggling to make ends meet. She was raised with the values of hard work and determination, but she harbored a dark secret that would change her destiny forever. Years ago, Eleanor had been trapped in a loveless marriage to a man named Richard, who had been the sole breadwinner of their household. They had a young son named William, who was their pride and joy. But as the years passed, Eleanor grew increasingly resentful of her mundane life and longed for the extravagance she saw in the lives of others. One fateful day, Eleanor hatched a sinister plan to escape her dreary existence. She took out a hefty life insurance policy on her son, William, without her husband's knowledge. Eleanor knew that her husband's love for their child was unwavering, and she intended to exploit it to her advantage. Over the course of several weeks, Eleanor meticulously planned the murder that would bring her the wealth and freedom she so desperately craved. On a cold and moonless night, she crept into William's room, her heart heavy with guilt, but her determination unwavering. She approached her sleeping son, her hands trembling as she wrapped a cord around his tiny neck. In the chilling silence of that dark room, she squeezed tighter and tighter until her beloved child stopped breathing. Tears streamed down her face as she realized the enormity of her crime. Eleanor staged the scene to make it look like an accident, carefully placing her son's lifeless body on the floor beside his bed. When the authorities arrived, they concluded that William had tragically strangled himself in his sleep. The insurance payout that followed was substantial, and Eleanor suddenly found herself living a life of luxury.